Hello. Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes, you can now. And if someone can pass me the clicker, that would be wonderful. So good evening. I am so thrilled to be here tonight. The turnout here is spectacular. It's wonderful to see all of the support for entrepreneurship in the region. So that setup, you're going to learn about the top 10 breakthrough technologies of this year. And some of them you've probably heard about, and some of them you haven't. So what I want to do today is inspire you, to inspire the new entrepreneurs, and also people that work in larger industries, to think about where the trends and new technologies are going. So MIT Technology Review is MIT's magazine of innovation. We've been around since 1899, and for the last 15 years, we've been choosing the breakthrough technologies of the year. Now, the way that we select them, and the way that, let me tell you how we think about technology, because it's not just apps, it's not just Netflix, although I do love Netflix, but it is much more broad in the way that we think about technology. Thinking about how new things are emerging from labs and startups, and even large corporations in energy, in medicine, and IT, how new technologies are impacting people's lives and making them better. And we think that new technologies create economic opportunity, new jobs, and really even disrupt industries and create new ones. So let me take you into some of these technologies. Well, first, let me say that we have a very strong track record in doing this. So we've been working on this for 15 years, on these new technologies, and this shows you some of the successes that we've had. Microfluidics, which is a diagnostic tool that we recognized in 2001, which has gained incredible traction in helping detect malaria and all types of different diseases around the world in a very cost-effective way. Social TV, one that didn't pan out yet, but actually, perhaps with the popularity of Netflix, it might. Siri, of course, you all have in your phone, so you're very well aware of that technology, but we recognized it before Apple did, and recognized that it was going to be a very important technology. Universal memory is one that hasn't worked as well, but data mining, in 2001 it was called data mine, but now it's big data, and it's pervasive and it's everywhere. Green concrete, another one that the technology's still there, but unfortunately this method is not as cost effective as it needed to be commercially viable. And now, what you've been waiting for, the 2015 breakthrough technologies. So the first one I saw out there in the lobby already, virtual reality. Now, Time magazine said that virtual reality is going to be the technology of the year. But in fact, virtual reality has been around for a long time. When I worked in the film industry 18 years ago, before I came to MIT, we used virtual reality goggles already. So why is virtual reality now on this list? Well, I'll tell you. The technology that's been used to power virtual reality has been around for a long time, but it often can give you a headache. It requires a big headpiece, and what it does is actually trick your eyes. Now, why we say that it's a time for virtual reality is because there's new technologies that are very different, and they're actually bringing that virtual experience to you in a new way. So there are actually, rather than doing this, which is what virtual reality did before, stereoscopic 3D, in fact, a company by the name of Magic Leap has devised a whole new technology that actually is two little cameras that project onto your eyes that bring that to you. So no more headaches. I think that the headsets are going to reduce dramatically, and you're going to feel this technology in a whole new way. Now, if you think about the applications for this are tremendous. The ability to go beyond just telepresence and actually feel like you're with a colleague who's halfway around the world. There's medical applications for this that are really powerful. And we think that now that this technology is going to be in the marketplace, that there'll be entrepreneurs that will be inspired by this, that will create all new applications that we haven't even heard of yet. Microsoft is also coming out with their new technology next year. And of course, you know that Oculus, that was acquired by Facebook, and Samsung are already in market. And as I said, why it matters is that there's going to open up a whole new world of possibilities. Now we're going to move from the virtual world to the material world. Now, building materials. Now, I see a lot of building going on here, and thinking about building materials that we traditionally use, such as concrete or ceramic, are heavy, they're brittle, and they're prone to breaking.
I want the material to have a certain
This
strength,
is Julia
a certain
Greer,
weight,
who's going to tell you about new
and
technology.
based on that, we would like to predict what kind of architecture, what kind of structure this material is going to have. What we have been doing in our lab is precisely that. We are creating materials that are very, very lightweight, that can be up to 99% air, but yet that retain their very high stiffness or high strength of their parent material. So what happened was that there were elements of architecture introduced into the design of a pyramid, effectively, that allowed it to be stronger and more lightweight, and hence use a lot less of the material, constituent materials, and be a lot cheaper to construct.
So that's Julia Greer from Caltech. And if you notice the structure that she had there, it was basically the ability of something with the strength of ceramic to compress it, and it bounced back like it was rubber. So you can imagine what that means if you can do this on a larger scale. There's tremendous applications for batteries. Thinking about one of the limiting factors of your phone is the size of the battery and the length of time that you can use that battery. If you have these ultra-light, ultra-strong types of materials, you can lengthen the time of your battery usage. There's also medical things where you can construct scaffolding to use in the inner ear and different types of medical applications. So we're thinking this is a really interesting way that could scale. Now the next one, and my limited time here in Jeddah, the driving is really interesting. So car crashes account for 32,000 deaths, and I think there's probably a lot more accidents. And imagine this is you. You're driving the car and someone has stopped up ahead. And imagine if your car told you to brake. You could go around. So basically what this is car-to-car communication. Now, you've probably heard a lot about autonomous vehicles. And I believe that that's actually coming. I think we all believe that autonomous vehicles are coming. And in fact, the technology for those vehicles is already here, but there's a long way to go from a social and a policy aspect. So we see that this is actually an in-between solution, that having cars on the road that could actually talk to each other and prevent accidents is really important. So this is actually coming to market next year. So GM with their Cadillac series, and Mercedes is getting in the game, as are a number of different Chinese car companies. So this is something that you're going to start to see and feel in the next year or two. And clearly why it matters is that it can save lives. And I think the second thing that it matters for is that it's the interim step for autonomous vehicles to become a reality. Now the next one is internet access. Now, I look at everyone in this room and everyone has their devices. and you think about reliable internet access is critical to your life. When you go somewhere and you don't have access to the internet, it's a real problem. Internet access also enables people's lives. You have the opportunity for education. You have the opportunity for different types of banking. It can really bring people out of poverty.
3, 2,
So this is Project Loon.
Straight up, straight up, straight up, straight up.
Starting today, we're launching a few dozen balloons so that 50 testers right here in the Christchurch area can get online through this experimental balloon network.
Bingo. Yay! And that was fast too. To be the first person to do that is a little bit cool as well.
Having access to the internet can change lives, and there are 5 billion people on the earth that aren't reached. Balloon-powered internet sounds positively mad, and in a way it is, but it's mad in a very practical way that could just work.
So it does seem sort of bad, doesn't it? But in fact, it's real. And there are some issues with it, that those balloons have no way of really steering, so that's something that they're working on. And they're working on making better materials that are more reliable. But there's right now a bit of a battle between Google, or now Alphabet, and Facebook. Facebook is using drones. And I think both of them are going for the right solution. And why it matters is very clear. On bringing reliable internet to more people that are offline now will only make our world better. So now we're going to move to healthcare. And thinking about cancer, obviously, is a huge problem that we want to solve. Now, one of the issues around cancer is that if it can be detected early enough, your chances for survival are huge. So this is the Chinese University in Hong Kong. Professor Philip Lowe is working on what's called a liquid biopsy, meaning taking a little bit of your blood and testing it and being able to understand before you have any symptoms whether or not you have lung cancer. Now, knowing that if you can catch that in stage 1, your chances of survival are much, much better. And this is non-invasive and very simple to operate. Philip Lowe, the doctor that did this, in the 90s actually developed another genetic test similar to this technology, detecting Down syndrome in mothers. So he thought he could use that for this. And right now they're using it just for lung cancer, but it's going to be translated into multiple types of cancer and perhaps other disease. So early detection is something that we're seeing as a huge breakthrough. There's a number of people working on this at Johns Hopkins, at Mass General Hospital, as well as Dr. Lowe in Hong Kong. And clearly why it matters is to save lives. Now next, we're going to move into the physical world again and talk about water. Now here in the Middle East, I know that this is a very important topic. There's not enough clean water on the planet for people. And that problem's going to become worse and worse. So there's a number of different companies that are looking at technologies that will help make this more efficient and cost-effective. One of them is IDE, that's doing mega-scale desalination at much lower prices. So the way that they're doing this is looking at it as an engineering problem. And they've devised ways to create the plants using a lot less piping. They are looking at ways to, I'm just looking at this, I've gotten ahead of this. So they're using reverse osmosis technologies, and they're improving that type of technology, the engineering aspect of it, the membrane vertical array, and all of this at 1/4 of the cost. So there is a plant that just went online in Carlsbad, California, that is using this technology, and we're looking at expanding extensively. So there's a number of different startups in this realm, and we think this is a very interesting technology to watch. Clearly why it matters: clean drinking water for everyone around the world. Now next, we're going to move to the world of finance and commerce. And Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, proclaimed 2015 to be the year of Apple Pay. Yay. Who here has ever used Apple Pay? Raise your hand. The ladies have used Apple Pay more than the gentlemen. So, interesting. In fact, this is one of the technologies that we recognized at the beginning of the year that has not been quite as big of a breakthrough as we had thought. It hasn't quite caught on yet. So the need is clear. The credit card system is rather antiquated, and it's really prone to fraud. Now the breakthrough here was Apple Pay, but in fact, what the limiting factor is this technology here that you see, that the people at the point of service need to adopt this technology. Now the great thing about Apple Pay, that unlike Google Wallet or the Samsung similar technology, that you have to go up, open up your app, do all of this, it's a limiting factor. With this, all you do is swipe, but people need to have this technology. So I still think perhaps 2016 will be the year of Apple Pay. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, there's a lot of other people in this, and this is going to be an area that you're going to continue to see people working on. And I think there's an opportunity for this market in thinking about the regionalization of these types of technologies. Now next, we're going to go back to the world of healthcare and thinking about the brain. So big brain projects, we know also have been really trendy lately. And this technology is really interesting because it's it's amazing that we don't know that much about the brain. And we don't have really good ways to do testing into different things until we actually have this breakthrough. Now this is Madeline Lancaster, who's in her lab in Austria. And she was working on sort of traditional type brain research using neurons using stem cells that she had gotten from a mouse, and she was working on some projects. And she found that in her petri dish, these neurons kept growing and going from 2D to 3D. So it was basically, she kept throwing them away. So it was a mistake. And this is one of the key lessons on entrepreneurship, that sometimes a mistake can be a massive discovery. So one day she said, I'm going to let this grow and see what happens with it. And in fact, what happened was these stem cells grew into neurons and actually grew basically like a little baby brain. Not quite, but sort of like that. And so now these neural stem cells can actually be used to basically help scientists understand the brain and do different types of experiments on it. So this has really taken off, and there's a lot of scientists around the world working on it. And the impact on this could be huge on thinking about autism, Alzheimer's, and all these different brain disorders that we know nothing about. This can be a path forward in thinking about how to treat them. Now this one, we're moving now back to the physical world and thinking about food. And how do we get more food to feed a growing population in the world? So one of these ideas is photosynthesis and supercharged photosynthesis. So I will let the scientist talk for himself.
In the next 50 years, we're going to have to double our cereal grain production worldwide. To double food production in such a short amount of time requires more than our traditional techniques. Most of our cereal crops grown worldwide photosynthesize and fix carbon from the air using something called C3 photosynthesis. C4 plants like maize, sorghum, sugarcane, they use something called the C4 pathway, which involves a supercharging of carbon dioxide in the leaf to increase the amount of CO2 to around 10 times the level currently in the atmosphere. These are growth cabinets with internal lights, temperature, humidity, and also carbon dioxide control, which allow us to mimic the external environment. And we can also dial up a climate change experiment. So we can look at the climate models and say, what will the climate be like in 2050? The one instrument which allows us to analyse how rice plants grow over time is PlantScan, which is a cutting-edge tool using lasers and camera systems for both determining the structure of the plant in 3 dimensions, but also how the plant performs and how photosynthesis responds to its environment. The 3-dimensional models that come from this instrument are then teased apart so that we can compare one rice genotype with another, a transgenic rice genotype, for example, with its parent, and allow us to judge which of these plants are the best of the best to take through to our final breeding goal of a high-performing rice.
So if you notice here, he compared rice plants to cars, and the current rice plants that we have are a Volkswagen Golf, and these new supercharged one are like a Porsche. So obviously why that matters is to increase crop yields. Now the next technology is back in the world of healthcare. You all have heard of the Human Genome Project and understand that that has vast implications to the future of healthcare. One of the issues that arises is actually more of an IT and a social problem. We have all of this data that's being collected in databases around the world, this genetic data of different patients. But in fact, we have privacy rules that people don't want their genetic data to be passed around to a bunch of different people, but then you have medical doctors who need access to that data to be able to help patients. So we have a quandary here. So there is a group in Canada called Matchmaker that recognized this problem and created a solution for it, thinking about how the internet works and how different things are queried in different databases. So in fact, instead of moving the data around, it moves the questions around, and meaning a question from a doctor can be queried through multiple databases to be able to identify an answer. So it's basically called the Internet of DNA. And in fact, since we reported on this earlier this year, we found that it actually has been successful. And a doctor on one side of the United States was able to find a patient with the exact same genetic defect as another patient on the other side of the country that they never would have been able to find each other, and they have found the genetic defect that they're now able to solve. So this is a really interesting project that we're just at the beginning of understanding how genetics can solve for disease. So why does all of this matter? That's a great question. You just listened to me for 25 minutes. What it matters is that technology can solve big problems. It can inspire people. It can give people economic opportunities. It can disrupt businesses and start new ones. And it's not just the technology itself. Technology is not the ultimate good. It's how people harness technology to improve the world. So I hope this inspired you, and I look forward to the rest of the evening and hearing from you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kathleen. Let me